The mighty BBC has been told it's got to cut £500 million from its budgets within 2 years and join us all in the 21st century.
Hi, hello, welcome to the Old Geezer's Diary. My name is Chris, and today I want to ask you a question or two and tell you a fact or two about the mighty BBC. The mighty BBC is once again in trouble. It employs about 22,000 people, and it's just been told that it has to cut its budgets, cut its spending by 10% over the next 2 years. That's a big ask. They're talking about 1,000 or more people getting the sack and paying out obviously huge redundancies on some of those, but they also have to cut back on their budgets, cut back on what they're doing, and actually live within revised means, 10% less than what they get right now today. How are they going to do it? What are they going to do? Are we all in trouble? No, really, we're not, because the world has changed, hasn't it? The world has changed to a world in which internet creators do a better job than much of the big broadcasters can do. Let me take you through some of the things that the big broadcasters do now. When you look at the TV schedules, huge amounts of their broadcast output is quiz shows and kind of game shows. And to be honest with you, I think most of those are simply crap. They take someone who's reasonably well known, maybe a comedian, maybe a TV personality, and they put them in front of some ordinary people who are probably going to make silly prats of themselves at some point, and they get them to play a game and have the chance of winning a load of money. That's fine, and it attracts viewers, but it's not really what TV is about. I believe that TV, in its purest form, is about informing people, educating people, entertaining people, and quiz shows and stuff like that really don't do any of that, do they really? You might know a few more answers in the pub quiz on Friday night, but in reality, quiz shows, game shows are just kind of filler, and they're reasonably cheap to produce because you don't have to pay the contestants. You maybe have to give them a prize, but the money involved is relatively small. Let me tell you something. BBC, their lowest tariff, that means the money they pay to producers, their lowest tariff for a daytime TV show is about 20 grand for an hour. £20,000 for 1 hour of TV. Let me tell you something. Going back around 2006, I was producing an hour of broadcast TV for one of the Sky minority channels for about 15 or 1600 quid. I didn't have things like YouTube that I could rely on to gain some extra money. I didn't have much leverage as far as publicity and stuff was concerned, but I actually built up a nice little audience of maybe a few 100,000 people watching a show about caravanning that I produced for 5 years. And over 5 years, we built up a really solid little base. To be honest with you, I quit them because I was sick of it. Not sick of caravanning, but sick of actually making the programme. and went on to do other things. I then made a YouTube channel that got about 24,000 subscribers, which I thought was pretty good at the time. But everything changes. Now we've got big-time YouTube creators who produce stuff that makes them really good incomes, but on the other hand, they don't get anywhere near the amount of money that TV companies get for making the same kind of thing. That's strange, isn't it? I watch a few creators on YouTube, and some of them produce exceptional material, and some of that exceptional material could do with a bigger audience, although it already gets a startlingly big audience on YouTube. Let me quote one. The first one is a man called Steve Marsh. He does travel shows, and he on average does 2 videos every week, and they run to maybe about an hour between the 2 of them. Over the course of a few days, he gets loads of views on those, maybe around 1 million or a bit more than 1 million every week, every 7 days. 1 million views. That's a lot of views, as you realise. That is the same kind of viewing figure that some not very successful TV broadcast programmes get. Steve does amazing quality stuff. He goes on trips. They're short trips usually, and he talks about the travel elements, he talks about the places where he goes. Sometimes he has his partner with him, sometimes he doesn't. But his stuff is produced, I would say, to the same standard as any broadcaster could produce it to. The broadcasters themselves obviously will say, oh no, he's nothing like as good as us. But in fact, he's got enthusiasm, he's got all the ingredients needed to actually appeal to an audience, which is the key. The other thing about Steve Marsh that gets me every time is how much content, how many programs he produces. On average, I think Steve is putting out about an hour every week. An hour's worth of programming made by one person, filmed, edited, conceived, thought of, all the things that you need to do to make a TV show. Steve does an hour's worth of that every damn week. And I know just how hard that is, having made a half an hour every fortnight. The reality is that it takes enormous time to sit there and work it all out, work out where you're going, get all the figures together, get your calls together, get the background material in your head. Huge amounts of work, and this one man is doing all that and putting together what I would say would pass as a perfectly acceptable BBC programme if it were made to our format. Interesting, isn't it? And what does Steve make? Well, I think he makes good money. I wouldn't be surprised if he's making 60 or 70 or maybe 100 grand a year. But he earns every damn penny of that. And if he earns 100 grand a year, that's the same as making 5 shows budget for the BBC shows on their lowest tariff, a satellite channel per hour. Let me be quite honest here and say that when I was making TV shows for a very low budget satellite channel, I was making 2 half-hour shows every month for around 1,600 quid. And I thought that was pretty decent money, really. I thought that was kind of okay. Because bear in mind, I started doing this in around 2006 and quit in about 2011 after 5 years. Making 26 programmes every year. My head. You can imagine, can't you? So there you go, these people are different. Let me tell you about another show that I really like on YouTube, and it's called Gary Eats. And a gentleman called Gary, who likes his grub, goes out with one cameraman and he goes to a restaurant. I think he's probably there for a couple of hours, and he shoots a complete review of their food, and he does it straight off the shoulder. There are no kickbacks, as there are in some of these channels. There are no kickback. He is completely honest, and to be honest with you, I love watching what he does because he does it from the heart. It really is sincerely made video, and I think Gary could cheerfully have a half-hour show every week and do something really worthwhile for the whole country. He'd promote good food, he'd knock not good food, and maybe make people do better food. Now, I believe if the BBC or some other smart broadcaster actually got their fingers out and put on a satellite or an internet channel, which included work from all of these people, paid them a reasonable amount. I'm not talking about 20,000 for a programme, I'm talking about maybe £1,000 for a programme, bearing in mind that many of these producers could do 1 or 2 a week. Where do you go with that one? If you paid them maybe £1,000 a programme instead of 20 grand a programme, you could have a highly profitable channel on YouTube, on broadcast, on satellite, you name it. There is no reason why this couldn't happen apart from the entrenched attitude of so many broadcast people who think that they are little gods and they're the only people who can do it. The people who can really do it are so many of those YouTube creators out there who work their little fingernails to the bone and actually produce fascinating stuff. I would love to hear from you about content that you think is really great and that you would like to see more of. Just get in touch with me. I'm here. You can contact me on YouTube, you can contact me on Facebook, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm Chris, this is the Old Geezer's Diary. We'll talk about stuff that interests me, and your input is hugely welcome. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.